4.5 decades, 2000 AD has put itself forward as a source of satire and political and social critique. And although its targets have shifted over the years, the aim pretty much remains the same. I'm Kelly Kanayama, a comics critic and scholar whose research focuses on Judge Dredd, among other comics. And I'm here with Al Ewing, TC Eglington, Tom Eglington, and Ramsey Hassan to talk about critiquing the powers that be through sci-fi and satirizing a world that increasingly seems like a parody of itself. Before we get into it, I just want to say for the viewers, Ramsey has been to the dentist, and so that's why his camera is off, but you still get to see what he would look like normally. Yeah. So just imagine that photo, but like it's moving. Okay.
Yeah, totally.
The world is, quite frankly, very, very bizarre at the moment. How do you deal with that if you're trying to write comics that are supposed to be satirical or parodic or absurd in some way?
The thing I noticed with, I think in the last 5 years, this sort of sudden sort of change in trying to write anything satirical is because it's almost, you feel it's almost impossible. I mean, I've had a few ideas where they sort of, you come up with an idea and then it seems to be happening in the news like a few months later. It happened with one of my Dread stories involving a statue and this massive riot that kicks off about a statue. And then, you know, all the sort of Charlottesville stuff in America, American stuff kicked off with the statues, and here as well in Britain. So it's kind of weird because anything you come up with, you feel suddenly gets ripped out your hands, and then you've got the double jeopardy of suddenly feeling like you're then making light of a current situation. So I guess it's trying to find out the different. For me, I tried to move towards trying to find different targets in the you know, for me, I started going the direction of things about conspiracy theory, which are now sort of, you know, seeing almost like as one time that was part of the comics, and now it's kind of almost like become this weapon. So it's like finding different views on it. Maybe, I don't know.
I mean, I feel like there's that thing of like, it used to be that like when Dredd would sort of ride up to you and give you, and let me pull a random figure out of the year, 10 years for protesting now. That would be like, you know, an incredibly satirical thing that he would do. And now it's like, it's the news. And, you know, we're kind of, that's happening like on a lot of levels, that like reality is kind of moving. And I feel like this is almost like a kind of a starting observation, because it's like, it's been true for a while that reality's been moving so quickly that it's kind of hard sometimes to come up with anything that's wilder than reality itself. And I mean, I write like for the past few years, I've written like one Dread story a year, which is the Free Comic Book Day one. So I've and those have been attempted to kind of like jab occasionally at something that's actually going on, but it's like I'm always very aware that like by the time it actually hits, either what I'm jabbing at will be completely irrelevant because of the insane much of time, or it will be like super relevant in a way that, you know, I might be accidentally messaging in a way that I don't intend to, which is a danger.
I mean, you did that zombie comic where Trump was president before he was president.
Yeah, that was wild, because that was originally meant to be a satire of George Bush. But you know, Henry latched onto Donald Trump, that special hair way he's got about him was, that magnificent dude.
Yeah.
Let's
I imagine
mention-
sorry.
Yeah, no, I was just gonna say it was like, it was a coincidence, and that made us suddenly look incredibly smart.
It's weird. I feel like it's like a combination of like the old sort of cliche of like the more things change, the more things stay the same. Because like there's a lot of history repeating itself, and also like I feel like a lot of tech companies and tech think tanks are all geeks anyway. So they're reading all this material and they say these are great ideas. Let's monetize this.
Yeah.
And it's like 2000 AD, sort of like the research and development company for a tech place that happens.
Oh yeah, that's a worrying. There is a funny thing with that, and I think it's John Ronson's book, staring at the men who stare at goats. And one of the things he uncovers is the Americans tried to make a riot form, and they used it, but the problem was it would harden, and then the rioters would run over it. But it was a genuine military application, and you just think, and it was definitely must have been influenced by Dredd. So that's kind of worrying. You don't want that sort of influence.
No, I mean, it reminds me of, I think this was just a tweet where it said, sci-fi writer, the torment box was the most evil configuration that the galaxy had ever seen. Tech bros, we have created the torment box. Finally. Yeah.
It's like, well, hey.
I remember that one. It's like, yeah, we've created the torment box from the novel Don't Create the Torment Box.
Yeah. Well, Al, I guess what you could say you're a panel's 2000 AD veteran.
I am now. I was just looking at my grey hairs on the screen. Oh right, okay, I'm an elder statesman now. Great.
Well,
I've pretty been doing it. I've been doing Dredd for a while.
You've got your own collection out with the
early
Al
stuff.
Ewing Dredd.
The early stuff that I was hoping they'd bury in a vault is now out as a major collection.
I was wondering if what aspects of the world around you were you focusing on at the time, and has that changed from what you focus on now, just in your writing in general, for Dredd and for other things?
I feel like early on I was just trying to write, a good Dredd story, which is like just learning how to do that. Because it's a lot tougher than it looks, and I feel like everybody who writes Dredd kind of finds that it's tougher than it looks, and it's like a Doctor Who story in that you can kind of getting it right is like getting the tone right, getting the kind of the setting, with Dredd, like working out. To this day, I'm not sure I've done like a story about a craze that takes over the city. I'm not sure I've managed it, because it's like I can't remember what. Because it's like those are really tough. Like inventing a new one of those is just really tough. So early on, there was this thing where I was kind of not thinking so much about the satire. I kind of took the mickey out of a couple of pop cultural things. I had a go at the X-Men. I had I think I probably had a crack at James Bond at one point, but it's like very kind of low stakes stuff. I think the main thing I did in terms of any kind of real world satire was like keeping a very strong eye on Dredd not being a hero at all. Like it was really important to me that I never wrote a story where like the judges are great.
Right.
Because the judges are terrible. The judges are the torment box, It's like, so I was like really conscious of like, let's not do any the judges are big hero story, or like Dredd's you know, Dredd can be like the toughest guy, but like not in a healthy way.
Mhm.
So he's constantly like turning down medical attention, like, you know, acting like, or just like not telling anybody how depressed he is all the time.
That's toxic masculinity.
Yeah, God, yeah. Dredd's just this gigantic wall of toxic masculinity.
Yeah, he's like he's
Dredd
like a
is cancelled.
tumor of toxic masculinity.
And it's like he's not even, you know, he's kind of, he's not like an incel or something, but it's like he's a bolster.
Yes.
Like,
I was actually just going to say, actually, no. I saw someone, and I wish this was a phrase I had coined. I dearly, dearly wish it was, but someone described him as a lawmosexual.
It's pretty good.
Yeah.
I have a theory that he might be bisexual, but like, I don't know. I feel like there's been stories where he's kind of exhibited some buried desire somewhere at some point, but then I don't know. We're getting into territory where like I am far from the expert.
We're getting into
yeah,
someone's fan fiction.
Yeah, I was always thinking he was probably asexual. I think he probably like just assumes that all the judges just should be like that with like So yeah, he's just really horrible to all the other judges when they, you know, if they dare to like feel anything for him.
So what about that versus something like Zombo? I mean, obviously these are two very different kinds of strips, but I mean, in terms of the satirical aspect or the social critique aspect, was there crossover, or were they just two very different things for you?
I think there were different things. I think Zombo was even more kind of not really playing anywhere with major stakes.
Mm-hmm.
Like it was very much, you know, pick a pop cultural thing and we'll have a go at it. It was like I think sort of having a go at the Beatles was like the most kind of, oh, we're getting into it now. We're having a go at the Beatles, and yeah, we both like the Beatles, but we just thought, let's have a go at the Beatles. That'll be fun. But I mean, I feel like Zombo, even when it was like a horror strip, it was never like, there was never any kind of attempt to actually say anything.
Mm.
I'd feel kind of mortified. Like there are things that I've written where like I was trying to say something and like, you know, there was a message to be taken away and hopefully people got it. But like Zombo was not one of those. Zombo was like, we were almost shying away from that just because, I don't know, it's like if people are looking at Zombo for answers, then the world's in a really messed up place, you know? It's like, but at the same time, I don't know, I kind of, you don't want to like just fire off the guns willy-nilly. You don't want to just kind of do this kind of area of effect thing where you're making people just feel terrible. So you know, you don't want to do that either. I don't know. I feel like with Zombo, it's kind of, I probably am going to go back to it one of these days. I know I keep saying that, but like at some point. But like, I think probably as and when I do, it'll be a bit sharper and a bit more. You know, it'll be like 5 years later. I'll be 5 years older. And that's gonna have an effect on the satire. I think that's, you know, it'll either be sharper or it'll be sort of blunt and ineffective. But one way or another, it's going to change.
Yeah. Well, you should come back and do it.
I should come back and do it.
You should.
I feel bad that I don't.
Moving on to Tom. You know, from Al, the 2018 veteran, to Tom, who's kind of in the thick of it right now, you know, when the world is figuratively and literally on fire. Yeah. How do you decide what to focus on satirically because it seems like you would almost be spoiled for choice with everything that's going on?
Yeah, I mean, and I think to just what we were talking about before as well, with a lot of the dread stuff kind of predicted where we are now.
Mhm.
So I mean, that was the other thing, like, you just feel like you're repeating stuff if you just do, say, like with the Trump thing, you know, you feel like you're just repeating what was done with like Robert L. Booth in Dread years ago. So I just try sort of fix on different targets. It's similar things, but slightly different targets. So like the big thing for me was, like, you know, trying to focus on some of the aspects of social media, but in a way that's not totally obvious. And, you know, the thing that particularly I've noticed is the kind of rise of conspiracy theories, the way that both sides are sort of set against each other in this kind of echo chamber, and just that process alone is more interesting than one side or the other being right. So sort of things like that, anything that's got a little bit of nuance maybe. And then a lot of my other stories, I try and always put stuff about the environment in, because it just seems like we keep forgetting that. You're like, oh yeah, the big thing that's like just always there.
Yeah.
You know, because like politics is good and everything, but we need to, you know, be able to breathe to argue about politics, and so that's always kind of there. And some of my other stories, so some of the ones that are set in the Dread world, not particularly Dread himself, but yeah.
Well, this actually brings me to, I think, the first, I don't know if it was the first one of yours I read, but it was the first one of yours where I read it and thought, okay, oh, it's by this guy. All right, I'll remember that. You know, was the Sons of Booth?
Yes, yeah.
Storyline? Yeah, which is, you know, and you mentioned you don't want to do something that's already been done before with, you know, they did that with Booth, they did that with etc. So yeah, how do you take something like that, which is literally going back to, you know, somebody who's come before?
Yeah, well, that was kind of like to turn it on its head. So instead of, you know, because it was kind of like this Trump-like figure, but instead of being at the head of the United States, he's like this terrorist. So he's like the opposite of, he's everything that he hates. And sort of using things like that. So, you know, the kind of, the way they believe in this conspiracy that eventually undoes them, undoes them, and kind of the way that they create this sort of populist movement, which is kind of perverse in the Dread world, because they're almost like the heroes, anti-heroes in this very dark world. So it kind of, you just keep flipping it almost on its head, rather than just having an outright kind of, you know, because I felt with a lot of the satire about the whole sort of Trump period was that people were just reporting what was happening to some extent, rather than trying to, you know, sort of change it, which is what satire should be, and, you know, kind of play with it in the fictional world so that you can get different perspectives on it maybe. So yeah, with the Sons of Booth, it was a mixture of things, and like the toxic masculinity was a big part of it in the first one. You know, it was all about that thing of being disillusioned and not having a good male role model. And I just sort of think that kind of seemed to fit well in the Dread world.
Yeah, absolutely. You mentioned as well, you know, working the environment or environmental themes into your other stories, and how do you approach that if you're writing something, let's say like Thistlebone, which is, you know, much more classic British folk horror, and I think has that environmental tie right there.
Weirdly with that is I get like the sort of sorry, I've got a cough.
It's okay.
In that I get the sort of villain ends up basically telling all this true stuff about the environment, and that's quite a sort of reasonable take on it. And sometimes that's weirdly how I get stuff in, because it's sort of less preachy that way, or, you know, you can kind of then look at it a different way. And so with that, you know, it's almost like that was sort of taking the idea of, well, if you had someone that was like an environmentalist but mixed with like Charles Manson, what would they be? So, you know, I just kind of keep involving it in stories, not necessarily it being the main point of the story, but just kind of involving it. So it's sort of always there, kind of being discussed almost, or, you know, considered to some degree.
This question is for sort of for you, but also just for the panel at large. where do you all draw the line between doing critique, doing satire, and being preachy? Where is that line for all of you?
Tricky, because when there's times I've thought, I've gone too far, or it's like, it does sound preachy. It should always sort of be in service to the story, I guess, is the thing. If you start out with like, I'm gonna spread this message, then that's probably gonna fall flat on its face. But if you've got kind of a good story, and then maybe work some of that stuff in, for me, that's how I get around it. I
think you can make anything work. You can, because like there's not that much difference between starting off saying, "Oh, I'm gonna preach a message," and like starting off saying, "Okay, I have a theme. I want to write a story on a theme," because it's like, I think really it just becomes like a question of craft. Like, if you can keep it from kind of sounding preachy, if you can sort of turn your message moment into like something that really kind of like hits and like lifts the spirits, or in the case of satire, that like makes you laugh out loud, then you've done it. You've done what you set out to do. Like I don't know, it's like the kind of, if I sort of, I mean, that first Free Commemorative Day story I did, which was like a kind of quite a sort of it was like a pro-democracy group that was very much using some of the language I was seeing about, like, at the time, about like, oh, we must work with the Republicans, we must work with the Tories, we have to kind of we've Tories people too, we've got to like we've got to see everybody's side. And just kind of like taking I just thought, oh, it'd be funny to like have Dredd just burst in on this group of really nice people and like just brutalize them because Dredd's a bastard. And I mean, so that was an idea that was like, there was a message in there, but like the primary delivery system was like, oh, we haven't seen Dredd. I haven't, it's been a while since I've written Dredd as like an absolute asshole, just absolute piece of crap, like a proper old school Dredd applies the boot story. So it can be both things. You can and I feel like, yeah, you just gotta be conscious of like, are things starting to drag a little? Is the craft suffering because you want to shoehorn in, like, is your message like starting to get a bit like lumpy, like a lump in a bowl of soup? It's like, have you mixed it up really well so it's just like, you get all of the good stuff.
Well, what about you, Ramsey? Because I mean, I know you're coming from a more kind of indie small press self-published background where you often deal with real life issues and situations through a much more realistic or much less 2000 AD-ish lens. But yeah, how does that translate to something like Harlem Heroes, which you are reviving?
I mean, when Tharg asked me to pitch for it, I was like, I inherited like a lot of like tropes and topics in there. So you've got, rollerball, Running Man, 70s, sort of like when the corporatization of like sport became like a big thing, and the world being like the world of like the 3-day week and dustmen strike, and it all looks a bit dystopian. And I was like, okay, the lazy bad take would just be, I'm just going to regurgitate that again. This is going to be a team of black guys, and they'll be fighting playing against this like another wild team, and it would just be some crazy madcap sports shenanigans. But I really wanted to look at what was happening now, because back in the early stories, like there was a lot of influence from like the Munich air disaster and like the Busby Babes and stuff like that was in the original ones. So I was writing it last year, and like the idea that I had was like the Super Cup was happening at that time, where 5 of like the best teams in the world were going to make their own breakaway league that they could never be relegated from, and that you'd have to pay a ton of money to see. And it was just like this really, and it was like anti-football, and people were up in arms, and it's one of the things that Boris actually tried to sort out. You know, it was a weird thing. It's like football you can do, COVID no, weird. But I brought that into it. Yeah, I know it's weird. I brought that into it, and there was also like try and have like a mixed gender team, and there was like this really tricky melding I wanted to do, where I wanted to mix like Afrofuturism tends to be a hopeful genre with 2000 AD sensibility, which is anarchic and like it's really dark. And it's like, how can I do that with a little bit and have it cheeky and a little bit pessimistic? And one of the characters that I used for that was, because like the old captain of that team became a judge and his son became a judge. I was like, what if their child becomes a judge, like it's the family business, but really wants to get into rollerball? And there's a scene where they meet one of the a regular person who they've like tasered their dog because it disavowed the urination law or something like that. It was something like that. Because I kind of see, it's weird because I kind of see the judge cadets as like child soldiers or something messed up. It's like,
I mean, they're
kind of done, yeah, but they're kind of done as like it's like little kid cups, yeah, but it's like it's kind of messed up. If you read into it, like they're all genetically modified, and like they can't have sex or anything. So you're like a teenager, you're at your most horniest, and you can't express it. And it's like, what's that about? But yeah, I wanted to meld that together, and I'm trying to think of like, and yeah, I think sci-fi tends to be quite a tough one to, because I wanted to address more of like, because this is like the first kind of felt like because I'm always trying to try and find the right words for this, but I kind of felt like a self-imposed pressure, because I was like the first Black writer to write this. I wanted to implement all the things that I wanted to see. So I was like, oh, they're a team of multi-gender Black kids, teenagers, and we're gonna have them have different skin tones, which was really tough on a colorist, because usually you just have one color and it's easy, but it's like, no, I want you to, everyone's gonna have a different shade, and it's like, oh, but I wanted that there, and also just have it more have little flashes of like social realism in there as well, because I can see a lot of people going, you just have to write a sports story, you don't really need that. But if you think about, like, I always use the example of like Captain Britain, who's sort of like, when Chris Claremont did him, he was sort of like this Captain America derivative with an Arthurian twist kind of thing.
Mm-hmm.
And like Dave Thorpe, who never gets enough credit because Alan Walker came after and he was amazing. But like, he was a guy who was like, oh, I'm going to bring in Aleister Crowley, and I'm going to have like the Romani people in there, which was a kind of like a big thing in the 80s as well, wasn't it?
Sure, yeah.
And the Troubles as well. And that sort of British specificity kind of made the character stronger, I think. And that's what I was trying to look at for this. And I think I might have pulled it off. I don't know. It's
Well,
it's a
people
weird
will
one
find
to
out.
talk about. Yeah, I mean, it's a weird one to talk about because it's a sports. It's essentially a sports comic. So it's like
Mhm,
how can I add that dystopian edge into that? Maybe a
mhm,
lot like I put in a lot of like the captions where um people are like people are watching the game is interactive, and somebody gets injured or dies, and you can go on their GoFundMe page or whatever because they've got no insurance and stuff like
mhm,
that, or you can rewatch people's deaths on like an action replay that you can keep for yourself, like weird stuff like that.
mhm.
um but it's different than a Dread comic.
Sure. And I never really thought about this until you were expounding on it, but it is odd that people sort of separate the sports comic from these other kinds of comics that are more obvious vehicles for satire or political and social critique. Because I am not a knowledgeable sports fan or a sports fan at all, but like if you look at the way people talk about athletes and whether it's their personal lives or whether it's their professional lives, but the sort of just general public discourse, there's so much contained in that reflects these larger attitudes. Like if you look at the way people talk about what's the guy's name? Marcus Rashford, for
Yeah,
instance, and all this sort of dog whistling and the weirdness bound up in that, I think, I can see very much how that could translate into something
yeah,
like the sports comic.
yeah. I mean, there is a bit of that in Harlem Heroes where
Mhm.
it was more inspired by like the England team, and they were like saying because they're a team from the low life, which is an area that what was it, Robert Thompson,
Rob
is that right
Williams, I
name?
think.
Well, Williams, yes, Rob Williams. He created it. So like, do we want a team from there that to represent us? Because they represent Mega City One in this big tournament, and you have like all these hate like bigot podcast bigots like Joe Rogan types, and you have like kids who think they're cool, and what so
Mind you, if
what
there was
else
an
would you
actual
say?
podcaster team in some
Oh
kind of
yeah, and
major like fatal tournament, I might watch.
yeah, and the thing about like in my story, because there's a Super Cup, the people made their own sort of like ragtag era ball,
Mhm.
and the Harlem Heroes win that, and they challenge the best team in the Ultra League and say, if we beat you, you bring air ball for all, and if you win, then we'll quit or whatever, or we'll join you because we've shown to be good. But it's kind of like that. I think there is a kind of thing with footballers now. I think Marcus Rashford is a good example where you kind of have to be weird, like a spokesman, which was never. I can't think of Paul Ince being a spokesman back in the day. It wasn't a thing. I mean, John Barnes was kind. I don't. I mean, he rapped in a New Order song, but I don't know. I don't know if he was a spokesman. And I think is that era of the influencer, I guess, where you're a sports person and you kind of have to be something more. You kind of have to be more of a brand, maybe. It's interesting. It's definitely like the lead character in Harlem Heroes is kind of like that because they're trying to bring Arable back to the people and that kind of thing. But yeah, it's a weird thing.
Cut out there. But yeah, I think
My internet's bad.
it's fine. No, I was actually wondering, that brings me to another point. Does knowing more about, well, especially specifically America in this case, but just kind of, the cultures and social and politics and social structures and current events of America and other countries, does that affect, would you say, how you approach it? Because Ramsey, you mentioned the GoFundMe, and I mean, they do have
Yeah,
this over here, obviously, but it's not as frequent because of the way the healthcare system, the parts that are still in place, still
yeah.
work.
it's weird because it is set in America. It's Mega City 1 is in America, and you're trying to like big up all the thing. It's a weird thing because it was created in the 70s, and like in America, the projects they don't live in council estate. They don't live in tower blocks, for example, and that's more of a British thing. And like so it's all like this weird pseudo like British 70s underclass, like brutalist buildings of like Scotland, like mixed with like what America with American dystopia, like Escape from New York or something.
I can confirm
it's trying to meld.
That's exactly what it looks like.
No, but that's like it's interesting, and a lot of there's a scene in the Low Life where in the Harlem Heroes comic, and it's sort of like trying to it's a weird one because I'm trying to stay away from stereotypes as well. It's like, oh, like all these black characters from a council state. The team captain is from a judge family, so they're quite middle class, quite well to do, I guess. I think judges are paid.
Are they? Yeah,
or they say, "Do you want to kick people for free?" Yeah.
Yeah, some people will do that. You know,
it's weird. I mean, because they can't they can't have a salary, and yet they seem to have money. I'm not sure if that's ever been like fully explored.
I thought they were all just kind of
draft,
yeah. I thought it was provided by the state.
Yeah,
like
but
I mean not like paid directly to them, but just kind of they set you up. And
if they want to like pay off a knock or pay off Max Normal or something, they've got money for that. If they want to kind of there's a budget there, and every so often you see like a corrupt judge with like a fancy apartment somewhere that they keep. And it's like, that's gonna come from somewhere. But I could definitely see like families that are connected to the judges getting little perks here and there, little kind of, without even being corrupt, just like a little bit of preferential treatment, on the lists or whatever, of like who gets an apartment and what kind of apartment. So
yeah,
I remember like Tom was talking about like how the social media and how like the conspiracy theories are about. I was watching this interview with Ursula K. Le Guin, and she was talking about like when she was doing research for her books, a book about anarchism. Like she would go to an anarchist bookshop and she'd be really good friends with the owner, and he would like give her a wink and lead her to the secret room where all like the banned books are, right? And like because the internet is all in one place, it's like back in the day it was hard to find those kind of things. You had to know somebody. They'll lead you into things, on the anarchist side and even on the far right side. Like there were like little secret places, and but now everything's all in one place. It's like created
and
this
it's sort of
for conspiracy.
Yeah, and it's sort of
everyone's a David Icke.
The other thing, yeah. So because there's no like normally in society those people are kind of sort of separated just physically. And but now, because the internet, you get these massive clumps of people. I have this theory that the internet is essentially like Mega City 1, in that it's kind of got everyone behaves in that kind of extreme fashion. Anyone will do anything for identity, and you get all these like weird trends that come and go. So yeah, that's my kind of working theory of the internet at the moment, but without a Judge Dredd, thankfully.
I mean, I'm sure Nadine Dorries has some ideas on that score. I'm sure she's getting ready to. Unleash the judge system on the internet.
It's okay. It won't work.
Well, I mean,
I'm not saying.
Let's not speak too soon. Let's never speak too soon.
That's true. I've just seen, other things.
Yeah,
other very big ideas from the government.
I mean, I'm looking forward to getting rid of all the algorithms.
And like prosumer like equipment as well. Like you see all these like bonkers COVID like denying YouTubers, and their videos are so well produced, and like you can all that software and stuff really cheap now. And it's like, it's the same with like comics. Like, it's so much cheaper to produce and make it look professional. So I guess people can easily get fooled by that as well. And yeah, it's I guess that's a topic that can turn up. I don't know.
Yeah, there seems to be like
especially like all these deep fakes.
Yeah, that's a new thing as well. Yeah, that's like, it's going to throw everything, because we've always assumed up until now that things that you see can't be faked to that level. But now that's sort of undermines what you accept as the truth online. So yeah, that's going to be this is going to be a weird new phase, I think.
Be tricky to navigate.
Here's a question for the panel at large. How do you think the sort of 2000 AD sensibility has filtered out into your other work, or will filter out into your other work?
I feel like the thing with 2000 AD is that it's like Ramsey was saying, it's never like just a sports story, or it's never like just a it's always got like something to say. And that's been true since I was a kid, because I started reading 2000 AD like, I want to say like before Wolf died. It was the run up to Wolf's death. So I'd have been about 9 or so. But like but even then there was like, even in the most kind of action-packed story, there was always like, there were always things being said. There were always like, viewpoints being put across. Personal to the writer, but still like. So I mean, I guess that's something I kind of carry, the idea that there's no such thing as like an apolitical work. There's no such thing as like something that's just fun, like you can do. I mean, I was saying earlier that like Zombo was like absurdism rather than satire, but that had the Donald Trump thing in it. That had like even like that had like small things in there you could pick out, but like I feel like you can't completely, much as certain readers would love it, you can never strip out your own viewpoints and biases and sort of your own take on things. And it's better to, so rather than like attempting to do that, it's better to go in with a full idea of like what you're saying, like what's your messaging. Like, the thing about satire is that it needs to be laser focused. It needs to be targeted. If you're catching a bunch of people you don't intend to with splash damage, that's bad satire. That's bad. It's bad comedy. It's bad storytelling. So it's having that consciousness of like what you're saying, what you're trying not to say. Trying not to hopefully say like Judge Dredd. Oh, he's so cool. What a cool, the torment box. It's so great. Trying not to say that. So it's having that consciousness, and I feel like that started from reading 2000 AD at a young age, and just that expectation of quality.
Yeah,
I agree with that. I mean, it's the with AD, I always feel it never falls into complacency with the creators. They're always trying to just sort of keep pushing it a bit further and finding a new way. And that I think that's hopefully something that I kind of aspire to, and I think a lot of the creators of AD aspire to. And with satire, it's like really just trying to find the new targets and the new just trying to keep up with what is really happening and what might happen. Because the predictions were made for this sort of era we're living in, and it's trying to figure out what's 20 years down the line. So I find that interesting, because it does make you have to rethink stuff. You know, and maybe when everyone else has been positive and AD was like this sort of like dystopian, maybe we should become utopian now because everyone else has become dystopian. So, you know, it's like
there's been waves of that. There were times when 2000 AD was like, you know, the second summer of love, when 2000 AD was like dropping loads of E and kind of cruising around.
It was that weird time where, like, was it George W. Bush was president, and then and he was being really incompetent and rubbish, and then you had the West Wing going on at the same time. It's like the amazing president. So like, I don't know if that's a good juxtaposition, or maybe it's like a thing that you show people the perfect thing, so people will recognize. Wait, why is our president so shit? Like,
the West Wing.
When the one on TV is so great, like we've seen the possibilities of it.
The West Wing just destroyed so many brands.
I don't want to.
Did it really did?
The whole like, oh, if we just give the perfect speech,
Yeah.
If we just give the perfect speech, everything will be. No, that only wasn't. But yeah, that is the kind of thing. That sort of desire to.
Yeah, I don't want to sound like. I don't want to sound too jingoistic about this, but I do think, like, you know, there's that traditional difference between American sci-fi and British sci-fi. Was American sci-fi is like, gee, what a brilliant time machine, and like
that is what we say, yeah.
Like, sci-fi is like what is like, you know, War of the Worlds, or like always the negative side of what could happen, right? And I kind of feel like 2000 AD is sort of like the Adbusters version of that.
I mean, my theory of why that is that, like, American sci-fi has a budget. We have to build it all out of God. like you were saying earlier about like the 70s. I love the Dreadnought, the most recent one. And I mean, that's an example. Like the one in the 90s is like hugely splashy and has, like, you know, massive physical effects budget, massive, you know, whatever computer effects budget they had at the time. They built a Hammerstein. The one, the more recent one, it's like they've got trackballs. They've got like these really grim-looking high rises. It's sort of it's like a future that has come out of the 70s without stopping at the 80s and 90s. It's like a paleo future that's kind of what happened if like 1977 just kept going. And it had turned into Judge Dredd. And but like,
but 2000 AD has jokes. That's the thing. It has like, and is like, I always say that it's like the sci-fi version of Adbusters, because it's like it's got that where it's got the sarcastic edge to it, which I think is something that I like.
Yeah, I think it's the
writing. Writing for it is what I like, and I want to do more of.
It's that collision of the kind of bleakness, but with really sharp humor as well. That kind of, I think, maybe allows you to do, like, say with satire, it allows you to kind of sort of go into the horrible subjects, but still actually be laughing at them by the end to some degree.
So
it's like, but for me, it's like, it's trying to like find, like, if I'm doing that, for example, like with like black characters, it becomes a bit more complicated. I kind of think of like, let me think, like Blazing Saddles, or maybe The Producers or something, where it's a bit like, because with
Blazing Saddles,
like I don't want to be a downer, but like, you know, like when you think about like there's like certain things, like when you read black academics talking about like sci-fi and talking about like how like even something basic as a time machine is sort of like like cishet white fantasies, and it's like, if I went in a time machine and I wanted to see Led Zeppelin, if I went in a time machine, I want to see Led Zeppelin play, or the Sex Pistols, like there's a good chance that someone might call me the N-word or something, or if a woman goes, she might get slapped in the arse or something. Do you know what I mean? Like, it's you'll be back into those sensibilities. People always have. That's the weird thing about some episodes of like Doctor Who, where sort of like I kind of think like you're going back into these eras that are dodgy. So sort of like only, like, I kind of feel like only a white guy, Doctor Who, can like totally travel around unimpeached. I think that was a whole attraction. There's only.
Well, no, it could be really interesting. It'll be a great story though.
But it's trying to. But it's like that's the thing. It's like, it's sort of like try and take something that is quite dark and sad, but like having that producers, Mel Brooks, or like there's other, was it film Putney Swope by Robert Downey Sr. Right, he's that, and it's about this guy who's like this who's a black cleaner for this corporation, and they make him the head CEO, and it's all like a piss take of American like conglomerates and all that kind of stuff. It's meant to be really good. It's meant to be like really good, but it's all like trying to do stuff like that where like you can take something that's quite dark and like trying to find a spin on it. I'm sorry to bother you. That film.
Yeah, that's great.
And
I was just thinking. I think you might have hit on a great idea for a satire, which is Blazing Saddles meets Doctor Who. I think that would be. That'd be.
And then after, was it like a year or so after Sorry to Bother You came out, then all the this part's probably going to get edited out, but all the Armie Hammer stuff came out.
Yeah.
But really, yeah.
The thing is, he was too clean. Like you see him in movies and everything, and he's like, "Oh, this guy's really boring, like boring lantern jawed hottie." And then all this stuff started coming out. And I'm like, is he trying to do like a Justin Bieber type thing, where like you're this cute little kid who just reveals to himself to have all this weird edge, and now you can start having edgy roles? But I don't think that's.
You went too far then, if that's the case.
Yeah, he went too far.
We tipped way over.
Yeah.
I mean, I did say like, gosh, this is when I was still writing for Nerds, but I said, if this Judge Dredd TV show, Mega City 1 TV show goes through, he should play Judge Cal. Because I just felt there's something like not off necessarily about him, but I was like, he's got a hidden, he can put forth a sort of weird darkness, and then it, fast forward to all the Armie Hammer stuff, and I thought, vindication. But
also, like, I think the thing that I'm like really fascinated about with 2000 AD, I've been reading so much now, I'm doing a little bit of writing for it, it's like the British anthology format. Like they don't have that in America at all. And it's sort of like what kind, like how the format can influence the stories in a way. And I'm interested in that, like how writers explore that kind of thing, because I think it's really unique and super like interesting.
Yeah. Well,
yeah, and I think
a bit of time left. So
yeah, I'm just going to quickly say, I totally agree with that. It kind of, I think it's kind of fosters a particular craft, just that very short format. That I don't know. I think it's really good for writers and really good for artists. Very difficult. As you say, it's quite an outmoded kind of format, but it actually works as a really good for creators.
It's like all those films on TCM are like 90 minutes, and then later in this, like maybe mid 60s or something, films started being 2 hours. But you want 2 hours of my life? It used to be dinner and movie, a movie and a dinner, and it used to be like really compact, and it was like you would get a film noir in 80 minutes and you're home.
Because Foley was still around. You don't know how long your life's going to be.
Yeah, which I think was just cool about the British comics. They really like, they think about your time.
It's considerate.
Well, I think Al might be well placed to.
I mean, I feel like I've lost some of that. I've lost some of that brevity over time, but that was hugely important when I started. That starting with the Future Shocks, and I think these days back when I did them, there were 5 pages. These days, you only get 4.
Yeah,
so it's
really
even
short.
tighter. It's even tighter. It's training you to be like even more dense. But like, that ability to like pack a lot into a little. It kind of serves you well on the other side of the pond, but it's almost like they don't expect it, so the readers are almost fearful of it. They're almost like, it's a bit rushed, and it's like, no, I just packed a lot in. But like, so you kind of, I learned how to kind of enjoy the breathing room
Mhm.
And now, you know, I go back and I do my 6-page dreads, and it's like, you know, it doesn't feel like as spacious as it used to in those 6 pages, but it's like, you know, you can get so much done in 6 pages. You can just, and especially with a dread, which is just made for. It's like the spirit in terms of like the one-off episodes. You can just do a whole beginning, middle, and end. You know, you can make it. Like there was some classics like Barney the City Hall Computer, or Umpty Candy. You know, these kind of classic dread stories where you just sort of. I don't know if they've been reprinted recently, but they're just these like 6 pages, you know, and the first 2 are always like a double spread, so you've got even less room. But they just get so much done, and just I feel like John Wagner was just kind of a genius of packing stuff in.
Yeah, and putting out amazing ideas in a one-off, just like throwing away great ideas. You're like, oh my god, like people would do a whole series on that, and he would just like throw out idea after idea after idea.
It's like the 12-bar blues. There's little places you've got so much. You've got the buildings and stuff, but like an American short story is like 8 pages. It feels luxurious. You're like, wow, 8 pages. I could do a splash.
I mean, I honestly feel like, you know, if you're getting started with one of the big American companies, then maybe do like an 8-pager. You know, it's like any writer just starting out at this point, I would say, go back and look at the 80s dreads, the 80s one-off dreads, because those are such perfect little fables, little kind of parables. Like, they're just great.
But alas, time is finite, and so is Zoom capacity. So we have to say goodbye to everybody. Where can we find your upcoming work?
Well, I've got X-Men Red is coming out. When this drops, it'll probably be coming out in about a week's time. Issue 1, that's a Marvel thing. Pretty much most of my stuff is Marvel thing at some point. At this point, We Only Find Them When They're Dead is coming back for its book 3 very soon. So watch out for that one. Those are the biggies. Those are the immediate biggies, I think.
Okay, Tom.
I've currently got Death Cap running in the Dread magazine at the moment with Boo Cook, which, funnily enough, is inspired from the fungus story that John Wagner did. Another one-off that was way ahead of its time. And then I'm also Thistlebone 2 is coming out, book 2, Poisoned Roots, in I think the next month or 2. So yeah, look out for that. And that's it at the moment. Those are the 2 main ones.
Great. And Ramsey.
Well, viewers, get hyped because Harlem Heroes are back.
Woo!
In 2000 AD, Redeemed Volume 3. Can I say the time? So it comes out today. It'll be, by the time it says, it'll be already out. And there'll be the sequel will be in Volume 4.
Ooh.
And and there might be really cool 2000 AD shenanigans in the pipeline. So watch your space, people. Get crazy.
Awesome. Well, everybody check all those out. And once again, thank you, Al, Tom, and Ramsey. We will see you all later. Bye.
Thank you.